Ready?
Yes. Yeah.
We've got no structure to this one.
We have
no,
structure.
not at all. There's
So
nothing.
let's just see how it goes.
Yes.
From TLDR News, this is Too Long Didn't Read. Hello and welcome back to the Too Long Didn't Read podcast. After a couple of weeks break, we are back again, and joining me today is Zach.
Hello again.
And Ben.
Hello.
Pretty decent intros today.
That's pretty smooth.
I'm happy with that one. So today we're going to discuss a variety of topics. A lot has happened since we last recorded, and a lot is continuing to happen while we're recording. So we're going to try and keep you up to date and discuss some of the things that have happened in the last few days. So we're currently in the middle of more Brexit chaos, when aren't we? But we're currently in the middle of both sides being in the tunnel of negotiations and having kind of deep and kind of like close talks between each side. We don't yet know the outcome of that, really. There was supposed to be a cabinet meeting this afternoon, which could have given us some insight, but that's apparently been delayed till tomorrow because they're worried about leaks. Probably quite rightly so. I think it's fairly likely something would have been leaked from that. So probably not going to find out until tomorrow, but they're in a bit of a rush because at the end of the week we have the EU summit where a decision needs to be made. There needs to be a deal or not a deal before the end of the week, because if not, then Johnson could very easily be forced into asking for an extension under the Ben Act, which is something he clearly wants to avoid. So that's pretty much what's happening.
That is basically what's happening.
And no one knows what's going to happen next. I feel like a lot of people in the room probably don't know either. Looking at some of the speeches and things that have come out of people in the room, EU officials, etc., it still seems that there's some optimism. It seems like occasionally...
How are we all feeling? Are we feeling optimistic about a deal? You're not?
No.
Ben?
Ben?
Any opinions?
Well, I feel like I have to balance us here, but no, I don't either.
Give us a score out of 10, Ben. How optimistic?
I don't know. I'm going to go straight down the middle and go 5. I'm not particularly...
That's quite high. I think it's
Yeah,
lower than that.
I'm not
Considering-
particularly... Yeah,
That translates
I
to
think
about
there's
50%. That's pretty high.
Yeah. I don't know. I think... is this of a deal or just of getting out by Saturday? What optimistic for what? A good outcome?
Question. No, of getting a deal without an extension, I would say.
Oh, a deal without an extension?
Yeah. Which is apparently what they're still gunning for, but I would also agree. No.
Unless they've got something like secret that we don't know about behind closed doors.
That
They're
feels
always pretending
unlikely.
they have something secret. They never have something secret.
I mean, it's unlikely, but unless that's the case, I would actually lower what I just said. I'm not particularly optimistic, but no, there's still a chance, and it's not completely like off the cards yet. Like, it's still a possibility. But as I say, unless there's something hidden that people don't know about, I don't think it's the likely outcome right now at all. Why? What do you think? Am I being too optimistic? Do you two think it's completely dead in the water?
I don't know if you're being too optimistic, but I sort of pretty much agree with you. I think there's some small chance, but I think fundamentally, as it becomes more saleable to the EU, it just becomes less saleable to Parliament.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there is actually a happy equilibrium between those two scales.
Certainly in the next few days, it's such a tight time frame, and it's failed for so long up until now. Like, I don't know how it would even just technically, it's becoming harder and harder every day that passes. Even just to technically get it through in time becomes less and less likely. And with them really having until Wednesday afternoon before they have to announce something and present it to kind of like EU officials and EU leaders, like, it's really not long now.
Yeah.
And although we're not hearing much out of negotiations, so I guess it could be going better than we imagine, it's probably not going a whole lot better than we imagine based on past experience. And as you say, the only way that it could be going better is if one side or other is making major compromises, and if that's the UK, then will it fly anyway? Are we just going to end up with another deal that can't get through?
And I think that kind of comes back to like the crux of the issue here is that it's such a big issue that no one wants to compromise. And at the minute, there seems to be 3 parties that all need an element of compromise, and none of them are willing to do so. It's the EU, Johnson and Parliament, and they need to satisfy all 3. And I just don't think there's a deal that could ever possibly exist that would ever satisfy all 3 of those people to the extent that they're all happy enough with it for it to pass. I mean, that's what happened with Theresa May's deal. Theresa May made some compromises, the EU made some compromises, but just didn't satisfy Parliament at all, not enough. And with this one, It might be the same. It might. I have no idea. Like, I just can't see a situation where there is a deal that satisfies all three parties at all. Maybe there is one. Maybe I'm just not optimistic enough. But just from my own point of view, I just can't seem to think of something, because everyone's just so divided. I mean, even Parliament, I can't even think that there is a possible solution at all that would get a majority in Parliament, as we saw from the indicative votes. Like, I can't see it happening.
I think it's probably even harder now because of the 21, whatever they're called, the Conservative rebels who had the whip removed. Because you really can't see people like Dominic Grieve desperately going around to back out a deal, which means that chances are Johnson probably also needs some Labour MPs, which just makes the arithmetic that much harder. And he'll obviously need to keep the DUP on side. Although there have been some quite positive sounds coming from the DUP. And also there was an hour and a half long meeting with Johnson, Arlene Foster and Nigel Dodds last night. So you never know. But yeah.
Do either of you know more about the Saturday sitting of Parliament? Because who would be that would be better to explaining it than me? Because I know that it's happening, but can either of you explain it better?
Following the EU summit on Thursday and Friday, it's expected that Parliament will be sitting on Saturday too, which is highly unusual. It's only the fourth time that's happened. Ordinarily, MPs obviously don't work at the weekends, or certainly not in Parliament.
MPs don't really work that hard anyway.
Well, controversial take there. We'll leave that one on the table for now. Nice. Anyway, they might be sitting on Saturday to discuss basically the outcome of the EU summit. The reason for the session mainly is because if a deal isn't reached, then we'll be going into the whole controversy of, is Johnson forced by the Ben Act into asking for an extension? Is he going to try and weasel his way out of it? Is there like some other route he can take? And if he can, then at least if Parliament are in place, they're hoping they can force him back on track and force him into asking for an extension. So that would likely be the outcome of a Saturday session. The question is basically what comes out of the summit. And once we know that, we'll have a better idea of what would be discussed on Saturday. But for now, it's mainly Parliament's attempt to like keep their hand in the game and not let the clock run down too far before they have the opportunity to act again.
And that seems to be being billed as sort of the big. I know over the last few months, every single there seems to be a new the big day for Brexit. But this is the next big day for Brexit, the one that really counts all of this. That's the one that the news are all going all on about. Yeah. Which, to be fair, makes sense. Considering the time frame when it's happening, and I suppose the fact that it is so uncommon that Saturday sittings happen. The last time it happened was when Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands in 1982. That was over a war. That was Falklands War. So it's kind of unprecedented that this happens. It's not common at all. So I can see why people are billing it as that. But maybe that's just being overstated because it's so uncommon that this actually happens. And as you say, it all kind of depends what happens on Thursday and Friday at the summit, really. So. We'll have to see, but it's getting closer. The deadline's getting closer, so any votes on Brexit are, by definition, going to mean more and more as we go on. Yeah,
of course. And if there is no deal reached at the summit, or no agreement at all, then suddenly the Saturday session becomes a lot more important, and it's a case of who is able to kind of overpower the other side. I mean, they could come to some kind of agreement, but I think it's unlikely. But if they do reach a deal during this week, then the Saturday session becomes slightly less important. I guess then they'd be discussing whether the Parliament likes the bill, whether they're going to be able to pass it or not, which still would be consequential. But the real fireworks, the real kind of big day for Brexit would come if no deal is reached. That would make Saturday a very unusual and probably very dramatic day.
The question that I have, though...
Oh, go on then.
Yeah, what's your question, Ben? Go for it.
Sorry, my question. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
That's just
I felt
really
very
nice
condescending even while saying that. Go on, Ben. Get your question out, mate.
I feel like I don't want to now. No. So the Ben bill, that said in that it said that if we haven't reached a deal by a certain date, then Johnson would be required by that law to seek an extension. Yep. What was the date?
I believe it is Saturday.
Yeah, it is.
Right, okay. That makes
Which
sense.
is why Saturday is the big day, because Johnson either will or won't send that letter. And if he doesn't, then my word, things will get interesting.
I had in my head that it was sometime mid this week, and I was like, how does that work? So, no
after
if it's
the
Saturday...
Summit, basically.
Right.
Yeah, it was
I see.
deliberately giving him enough time to try and get a deal sorted at the summit. And if he doesn't, then it's kind of reasonable, because if he doesn't, then there's not a whole lot of time. There is talk of holding another EU summit closer to the deadline.
It's getting so hectic.
But at that point, you're not going to be reaching a new deal. That's more likely to be if they reach something this week and they want to develop it further, or they want to...
Apologies, everyone.
That's okay. You moved away at least.
Yeah, well,
You didn't make them ill too. Me and Zach are sitting further away from each other than we normally are because of his disease, and Ben is through the phone because he's also sick.
Exactly.
Anyway, I can't even remember what I was saying. It was deliberately to give them enough time, and even if there was the second EU summit, that wouldn't be to like hash out a new deal, just because there really wouldn't be enough time there. That's more likely to be like the final ratification, the final like steps. So this really is the last chance to make a deal this week.
Okay, so another question. Do you think that it's going to... Do you reckon that Johnson is going to try and get out of this, or do you reckon he will accept the Ben bill and seek an extension? Legitimately, I might add.
I think he will. I think he realises that it's high stakes at the moment, and that's why he's trying so desperately to get a deal.
Okay.
But I think he's anticipating following the Ben bill. But that being said, I think the opposition parties might have slightly overplayed their hand, because I don't think it's going to hit him as badly as Labour and the Lib Dems think if he gets an extension. There's been long enough for a narrative to develop, and I think the narrative is that he really is trying his hardest for a Brexit deal, and that Parliament aren't letting him through. I mean, at the moment you can poll people on how much they like Johnson, Parliament and Corbyn, and Parliament comes out beneath even Corbyn. People are really not keen on the way Parliament's behaving. So I think him and the Conservatives are probably just less worried about how that will affect their electoral chances.
Yeah, they've had a long time to build this up now.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think it depends on what you look at. There was a poll in the Telegraph this morning that said that if he asked for the extension, then it's likely that by seats, Labour will end up getting more seats than the Conservatives in the next election based on their polling. But that's polling done now in the middle of it. They've not had the opportunity to run the campaign. They've not had the opportunity to tell their narrative. I agree with Zach. I don't think it will be as damaging. I mean, there's a certain number of people who probably would move to the Brexit party after that happened, because they would see it as some kind of betrayal. But there's also a huge number of people that would see Parliament as the ones at fault, or the EU as the ones at fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is exactly what the Conservatives are trying to tell people at the moment.
I don't know. I can understand that, but I think I see it more as sort of he came in on the promise that we would leave on the 31st, and I know that Theresa May made that statement, we'd leave on the 31st of March and all this, and that I think the Brexit Party and Nigel Farage often like quote how many times she said in Parliament that we'd leave on the 31st and all this. But I think Boris Johnson came in sort of as an alternative to Theresa May, like trying to do the thing that Theresa May couldn't, and he came in almost like that was his almost like flagship thing for his leadership bid, which was we're leaving, do or die, on the 31st of October, no matter what, like it's happening. Like, and I think that was one of the reasons why, you know, like the proper Brexiteers backed him. That's why that he I think he is where he is, and for him to then, irrespective of whether it's his fault or not, for us to then remain, I think that it would lead to the interpretation that people just see him as, well, he's failed the same way Theresa May has. And although the polls show that at the minute, I think that it'd be very different once it's actually happened and we've had another extension and you have all of the backlash from that, and you have the Brexit Party going on about, well, he said we'd leave. Look, this is two Conservative leaders now, and we had faith in Johnson, and now he hasn't done it either. So now, you know, how can we trust the Conservatives at all now? So I think that would, I think it, from his point of view, I think he's going to try his absolute hard. I'm not saying that I think he's going to break the law, but I certainly think he's going to try everything he can to get around it. I think he'll do any, short of, I really don't think he's going to break it, but I really think short of that, he'll do as much as possible to get around it, because I think it would be too, and especially with a minority of what's he got a minority of now?
It's 40-something.
43, something like that. So there needs to be an election soon, and how is he going to fight an election while we're still in the EU past the 31st? I have no idea.
It's a really bad look for him, certainly.
So I actually think he'll try everything he can to not.
Even if he is able to sell it as Parliament's fault or the EU's fault, you're right, he did say that this was like his top priority, he could do it, and it shows real failing on his side, even if you believe that it's not his fault. It was his core policy, and there's been so much effort into like making the 31st the deadline, the day that it will happen by. I mean, I remember in one of the early podcasts we talked about the story that the government was going to spend something like £100 million on advertising to publicise it.
Yeah.
And I remember being kind of cynical at the time, and I still am kind of cynical. I don't think it's barely possible to spend £100 million when you compare that to like other equivalent campaigns that big companies run over like longer periods of time. £100 million is a huge amount of money, but walking around London, you can't avoid it. Like the number of times I see 31st of October on a billboard somewhere is insane. They really have made this their flagship thing, and having to go back on that, you're right, is a terrible look. It's just how many people would actually go as far as then changing their allegiances at an election. And you're right, we can look at the polling now and say whatever, but we haven't been through the whole campaign yet. We haven't got to that point. And realistically, we're not going to for a couple of months, absolute minimum. So I guess we'll wait and see what happens. But you're right, he certainly doesn't want it. Like, there's no way Johnson wants to ask for the extension. It's just how far he's willing to go to try and stop it.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll go as far as breaking the law. That's my own opinion. I think he won't. I think he'll go as far as he can up to that point.
Yeah, but I think that the point, I agree, but I think that we just have different understandings of where the law lies. Like, there really is not much he can do to frustrate it without being seen to break the law. So I think fundamentally he'll just... I mean, there has been some talk of him resisting a little bit more, and forcing a judge or a civil servant to send the letter, because that might be slightly better optics, but that's still breaking the law, and I don't think he'll go that far.
And I don't know how much difference that would make. I feel like maybe people who care about politics would be interested in that as like an interesting quirk of how it ended up happening. But do you think that like an average person, like a Johnson supporter, will be like, well, at least he didn't write it, like some random lord or servant wrote it?
I think for those people who would otherwise move the Brexit party if there was an extension, and those are people who are obviously not particularly concerned, because if you're interested in politics and you're constantly following it, it does look like, I mean, Johnson has tried, to be fair to him, his hardest, and he's been frustrated by Parliament. So the people who are moving towards the Brexit party are those people who obviously aren't paying that keen an eye on current politics. Yeah. And I think for those people for whom optics matter, that will make a difference. So, and that's obviously the section of the current electorate that he cares about, the people who might move to the Brexit party. Sure. And those people who do just care about optics and probably aren't as well versed in what's going on.
I just don't know how much difference from like an optics perspective it would even make. Like, I know that he could then sell it as like,
I think a judge going to the EU looks good for Johnson.
If you've got like that as a visual, then sure. But I think regardless, Farage and the Brexit party will like sell the same line. I don't think it'll make a whole lot of difference.
That's almost predetermined.
Of course.
You know what Farage's line is going to be, and you also know what Johnson's line is going to be. Like, however this pans out, there is a certain sort of determinism to all of this, which is just that Farage is going to go, look, he didn't get it done. Yeah. And Johnson's going to go, Parliament versus me. It was not my fault.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that it would be better if someone else was to do it, and if someone else was to step in. And also, there's a couple of other things, which is that, I was going to ask actually, the Orban thing, trying to get him to block the extension. Have we heard any more on that, or is that still the same? Is that still a possibility that could happen? Because that could be another way of...
Sorry, I have heard a little bit about that. Apparently...
Sorry, Zach, I don't want to interrupt, but
go for it.
We get criticised for not explaining things enough. So, does someone want to explain what this situation is?
Correct me if I'm wrong here, anyone, but I don't know where it was, but I think it was in London somewhere. Yeah. Was it at number 10 or...
Ben's got so overwhelmed by where the meeting was. I don't think it's me.
I'm going to go for some... You can cut this out. I'm going to eat some
back to olive bread time.
Olive bread.
There's no one listening to this unless Ben chooses to stick the olive bread time in. Like, Ben can just start his explanation again.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember where we were.
The Hungarian foreign minister met in the cabinet office with some UK officials, and from our understanding, there were talks of Hungary possibly blocking an extension from the UK, which would mean that although Johnson has sought the extension and he's done what the Benn Act stipulates he should do, we don't get the extension, which is kind of a win-win for Johnson, really, because he's not broken the law and we don't get the extension, so we leave on the 31st.
Just qualifying, we don't know that those were what was being talked about.
No.
Yes,
no one
exactly.
knows what actually was talked about in the emergency cabinet meeting.
No, but it's been speculated that could be what possibly happened.
Yeah.
I think that's covered our backs quite nicely.
Yeah, I think you did it well. Well explained.
So yeah,
no, it's an option. But there was an interview with Dominic Grieve a couple of weeks ago. I think when that first started as speculation, where he said, and I think this is the case, that if it was such that Johnson had persuaded Orban, as opposed to Orban sort of doing it independently,
yeah,
to block any extension, then he would still be breaking the law because he'd be frustrating the statutory purpose of the instrument or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
right.
So that's, I think, well, I know this is only sort of piecing together the puzzle, but I think there was a solid chance that that was his plan, and that's fallen through, and hence the desperate scrabbling for a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that, or he's realised it is actually illegal. Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think it's his plan anymore, because I really don't think, because his current attempt to get a deal is a very high risk strategy, because obviously the biggest, there's sort of three outcomes for him. There is, no deal is agreed, and then we have no deal, or an extension.
right.
Rather.
Yeah,
That, or he agrees some deal with the EU and then Parliament don't pass it. And the last one is that he agrees some deal with the EU and Parliament pass it.
Yeah.
And of those outcomes, probably the worst outcome would be for him to pitch a deal, it not get through Parliament, and then there'd be an extension. Because chances are the deal is going to have to be some sort of compromise on this, that, or the other, which will sort of undermine his Brexiteer credentials. And if he was sure of something like, Orban vetoing an extension, I think he'd have very little incentive to try and get a deal as desperately as he seems to be at the moment.
yeah, yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I think.
No, thank you very much. It's
Yeah.
very kind to say.
Yeah, there we go. I think we agree on that one. This is good.
That, or this is all just political posturing. Like, there is a chance that this is just both the EU and the UK knowing that they can't agree to anything, but neither wanting to be seen as the one that stopped negotiations to avoid blame for the impending fallout from no deal.
Yeah, which is very possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, can I just talk about something completely different?
Go for it.
Go wild.
Okay, so
I'm excited.
But did either of you
yeah.
watch Have I Got News For You, which started again this week? And I will
No, I
explain for
didn't.
American listeners. So
I love how specifically American.
I know.
okay,
What about
all
the
people,
Germans?
yeah, that's very true. Or anybody that has
Or
no
the
idea what
Krauts,
Have I Got
because
News For You is.
Yes.
Yes.
No, you as.
So it's like a comedy panel show in the UK that kind of mocks what's happened in the news each week. Not to be confused with Mock the Week.
I was about to say, are you describing the right show there?
Yeah, so no. So it's just they kind of mock headlines and politics and stuff like that, and they sometimes have politicians on. So they had a Liberal Democrat MP on this week, and there's different hosts. Boris Johnson himself has actually hosted it before.
Multiple times, right?
Yeah, he has,
Yeah, I think a couple times.
which is worth watching
He
if you
was
haven't.
quite funny, to be fair.
Yeah, he was.
You've got to give it to him.
Yeah, he actually was. So it came out on there that I never saw this before, and I'm reading the headline of The Independent here, so I'll just read it out. Boris Johnson wrote hilariously awful film script rejected by distinguished
No, I
director.
saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
And the Prime Minister had
That
hoped
was
to cast
hilarious.
Angelina Jolie or Scarlett Johansson as gorgeous but scholarly female lead. And the main character
This
now...
really is completely different to what we've done.
Oh, no, it is. And
I like this left turn.
its lead character in the film, which would be called Mission to Assyria, I think,
Okay.
is an archaeologist named, and this is the main character, Marmaduke Montgomery Burton. Is the
Incredible.
main character.
What a name.
He is funny. Sometimes he really is.
Is this meant to be funny? Was it like a comedy? Or
No,
is
it
it meant
wasn't.
to be
It was
serious?
supposed to be an artistic film, very similar to the plot of The Monuments Men, about
Okay.
people who, about a bunch of scholars
Yeah.
who go around saving scholarly important artifacts
Okay.
from war zones and stuff. It's really funny. You should read.
It's a
some
good
of them.
name.
They've got loads of great quotes on.
Oh my
Do you
god!
have
Yeah,
more for us then?
I'm reading some of these now, and apparently in the script, helicopters go dugga 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 thwack thwack thwack. Apparently,
How would you write it down, Ben? You're taking the piss.
Well, no, I'm just
You
saying.
write
I
down
wouldn't
a
write it down.
helicopter.
I don't think the helicopter sound needs stipulating in the script somehow.
True,
I think
true.
people
You could-
understand the noise of a helicopter.
Yeah.
So I just thought that's a little bit
That
more,
was such a
little bit more
left
funny.
turn. That was an unbelievable left turn from you there, Ben.
I like that.
I like it a lot. Yeah, that was hilarious. I read some of that stuff as well. There's some just such great quotes about it. He does have a way with words. I mean, you say what you want about him, but he does just say some of the funniest stuff. He called the Extinction Rebellion people crusties as well. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, there's a great turn of phrase. It was like cantankerous crusties.
Wow.
Or something like that. And
sounds very Johnsonian. Like, I can believe. Ben's probably gone. Ben has gone.
This really would be the shittiest podcast if it was not edited. I'm actually quite tempted to release keep an unedited version and just release it.
This has gone really poorly.
It's just be half chewing.
Zach has managed to eat like 9 loaves of olive bread in the amount of time this has gone wrong.
So hungry the whole time. And Boris Johnson's dad was actually at the Extinction Rebellion protests.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something along the lines of, "I'm very," in the same sort of like Johnson tone, like I'm very happy to be a cantankerous crusty. I think it was uncooperative crusties.
Nice.
Now that we're just
less alliterative,
anyway.
But
this is a very nice segue onto another.
Is it now?
News.
I like that. Well, good work.
Extinction. We've taken Ben's left turn and we've recorrected. So yeah, Extinction Rebellion. Any pressing thoughts?
Yeah, so last night there was the big news that a lot of the protests were being shut down using Article 14. The police were shutting down the protests in Trafalgar Square, which had previously been
legal.
Pretty much the only legal spot for their protests. Though yesterday they were kind of all over the place. I know some of my friends were stuck in buildings at work, couldn't get out because of protests.
Couldn't get out of the building?
Yeah, the building was on lockdown. The walkie-talkie building, or whatever it's officially called. 20 Fenchurch Street or something, whatever. Anyway, that building was on lockdown at some point yesterday, apparently, because of Extinction Rebellion. So they were kind of all over the place, as is kind of their style. So they have been shut down. There's no legal protests for them in the city anymore. Kind of a controversial move. There's layers of controversy here. It's one of those things that, like, if you want to get angry, just go in the comments section of some news website about any Extinction Rebellion thing, and there's a bunch of angry people there. But controversy from the Extinction Rebellion perspective, and also now the fact that it's been shut down, some people are pretty upset that they believe properly ill now. What happened there?
There's a couple of sneezes.
Yeah. I'm not going over that side of the room anymore. Some people upset that they believe that the police have overstepped the mark, basically, and this is kind of undermining their right to protest and their right to like peaceful protest and all that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting one, and I think a lot of people are more interested in how they feel about Extinction Rebellion more generally than the democratic implications. I think a lot of it is tied up in like other feelings versus like taking this as a one-off event.
I don't know what I feel like about the actual Extinction Rebellion as a protest, because I think all of us can agree that climate change is an issue. Can we all? Neither of you are hiding feelings on this that I'm not aware of, are you?
That would be fun if we were.
I'm so secretly right-wing that I think it's all a conspiracy.
Yeah. So no, obviously I'm very sympathetic to the need to do more for climate change and for the climate, absolutely. But it's just more of a question as to whether the tactics that Extinction Rebellion employ are sort of right, or whether I could personally support them. And I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you. I really don't. I haven't, because on the one hand, historically change has happened through, protest that hasn't always. It has to cause some disruption. That's the point of a protest, and historically, that's the way that you grab people's attention, and that's how some of the biggest issues in history have sort of, come to the fore. So there is that side of things, but on the other side, like, I don't know, it's whether it's right to basically just shut London as a city down for. And it's been a lot of days this year.
I think there was a good point made by. They've had some disastrous media appearances, Extinction Rebellion, but there was a Extinction Rebellion organizer on LBC, on out of all people, Farage's show, the other day, who made a pretty sensible point about why this was their method of increasing awareness, whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And her point was just that they have tried to make some progress through the usual political channels, and through legal means, and you know what I mean. You can try and start like a Green Party, but fundamentally there was not enough time. Well, they believe at least there isn't enough time for them to do that, because to be fair to them, getting a movement started and up and running and then successful through like, you know, your traditional political means. You know, you start a political party or a pressure group, and that grows to some size. It's just, it just does take time, and especially with something that they consider to be such a time-sensitive issue. But on the media appearances, I think it's a real shame, because I actually, for the most part, support what they. I mean, I think it's sort of a shame that we have Brexit going on right now, because this does feel like an environmental crunch time, and this is all we're focused on. But they've slightly undermined themselves with some of their, firstly, the stuff they've put out on there. You were saying you read their little pamphlet thing.
Yeah, no, it's a proper book. It's like a few hundred pages. I had to pay for it.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's only like £6.
Look at that.
Yeah, I know. I only mainly bought it because I was buying some books, and like it was at the till, and it was pink,
nice
and it caught my eye, and I was like,
pink.
I'm interested in that.
It was pink, was it?
Yeah, it was. But yeah, no, I've not read all of it, but I'm in the process of reading it.
Like,
I didn't want to interrupt you by talking about bookshops any further.
I don't know. You said you hadn't fully read it, but they came out with the stat that they kept on getting hammered for was the frankly just slightly baseless claim that billions of people were going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And in some sense, that's trivially true. Like, you know, if you end up with a planet that can't sustain more than X number of people,
of course,
by some calculation, some amount of people are going to have to die.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like, you know what I mean? It is one of those sort of vague, it's a sort of scaremonger figure. Hasn't really got anything to it. And there was someone on the Andrew Neil show on BBC Two, who was just getting absolutely hammered for, because you have enough science to back you up.
Yeah,
you don't
need to.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Anything.
Yeah, exactly. You have enough really scary science to back you up. You should just go with that. And it's a shame that it lends ammunition to those sort of ridiculous conspiracy theorists who think that climate change is some sort of hoax. But apart from that, I think I sort of agree with them. I think it's a small price to pay for the awareness that they've brought.
And it's been very effective, to be fair.
Yeah, it has actually been really effective.
When you, in their book, they discuss like how it started and stuff, and it's been such a rapid ascent. And you're right, you could go through legitimate channels, you could pressure groups, whatever you want, lobbying. But you probably struggle to name beyond Greenpeace that many organisations that are doing that route. And yet within, I think it's like 2 years, they've gone from a few people to millions of people protesting all over the world, constantly in the headlines, at least in the UK.
In large part because Greenpeace just are crap. Greenpeace left a massive gap in the market for the environmental pressure group. Yeah,
so they've done a very good job, and it clearly has worked. And I guess I don't have a whole lot to say that you guys haven't already. Their methods are in many ways controversial. They are disruptive, but you're both entirely right, and that's the way that change often happens. And maybe it isn't the easiest or the smoothest way of doing it, but potentially it's the best way of doing it at the pace they want. And I guess also you kind of got the question of, are you polarizing people further with this matter? Are you actually risking the fact that people who are kind of on the fence are now going to fall on, who are these like idiots who are shutting down streets, shutting down whatever? You might see that as like an instinctive reaction and not actually pay attention to what their message is because what they're doing is so radical.
Sorry, can I just... so obviously I'm more on the fence about it than you two, so can I just ask you two a question then, just about this? So do you think that... Because obviously I agree that, you know, a lot of change in the past has happened through action that's been similar to this, but do you think that that is the only way that things will change now? Do you think that it's a necessity for that to happen, for the change to happen that they want? Or do you think it's just an easier way of, or quicker way of doing it is through the means they're going? Because I mean, if we go back to things like the suffragettes, or, you know, just as an example, back then, you know, you could realistically make the argument that that was one of the only ways that was going to change at the time that it did. Like that, you know, there was the suffragists as well, and they went through that, you know, their action wasn't as out there and as radical as the suffragettes, and they weren't as particularly successful. So back then you can legitimately make the argument that the only reason that really changed was because of the suffragettes and the action that they took. Whereas now, do you think that's the case now? Do you think that there have to be this disruptive for the change to happen that they want, or do you think it's just either easier or quicker or something like that?
I think for the change they want, it's undeniable that this is the only means that is extreme enough. I mean, they want to get to carbon neutral by 2025,
which is crazy.
Carbon
fast.
net zero, which is it's insanely fast. I mean,
even 2030, which is like a more like a less ambitious plan,
more
is even that
thing.
is pretty impressive. Even like some other governments and stuff around the world saying 2050. Even that is
2050
a
is
lot.
our current target.
Yeah. And it's like, that is still, I mean, it's not, you could definitely argue that's nowhere near fast enough, but you can kind of see why the government would set the targets around that date. So to kind of absolutely slash that to 25, like,
Yeah.
it's a big ask. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to unpick the impact they've had, like what's actually come from it. In their book, they certainly claim various amounts of success immediately after their protests and whatever. And they claim that because of that, they got access to various people in government and things like that. So they're certainly claiming that it's a very successful technique. And there's been clearly other movements before Extinction Rebellion was even really on the table. You had things like the movement post the whole Blue Planet phenomenon with plastic waste in the ocean and that kind of thing. And having worked in that kind of in an industry before TLDR that was like deeply affected by plastic waste, it was clear, even from the company's perspective, that was a huge issue for them. So it is something that these kind of campaigns does spark a real interest, both in government, both like in business and that kind of thing. So it is definitely working. It's just hard to unpick what is as a direct result of them shutting down roads, shutting down whatever, and what is just general social movement. But I agree with Zach that I think it'll be pretty hard. I can't think of any other way to be able to make it happen
There
as
just
quickly.
isn't another way, especially not in. I think first past the post here makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
It just means if you're going to start a new. I mean, the Green Party is just a great example. Like, I'm sure that if we had some sort of PR system, the Green Party would poll higher, because you ask people. And I'm also amazed that it's not a more politically popular move, but because when you ask people about, you know, whether or not they care about the environment and more should be done, you invariably get a majority of above, it's between 60 and 70, normally above 70, that think that more should be done. And I'm amazed it's not something that the Conservatives and Labour play on more often, because
they're clearly moving that way.
They are clearly, but like the most recent Conservative pledges were stuff predominantly in the Queen's speech, actually, which happened yesterday. It was more about like animal rights and stuff like that, as opposed to sort of fundamental change and decarbonising our economy.
So Zach mentioned a moment ago, and I know you don't have long before you need to go, Ben.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Yeah.
Do you have 5 minutes still?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I promised at the end of the Queen's speech video today that we would at least discuss that. And I promoted the podcast, so I feel like we owe people who have sat through this much. I don't even know what happened.
This much just uneducated.
Let's quickly discuss the Queen's speech, because the environment did play a part in that, though admittedly not as major a part in it as Crime and Punishment and Law and Order did. Like,
which was the big stuff.
It was a lot. Like, there was about, from my measurement at least, about 2 minutes of the 10-minute speech was dedicated
also,
to
they
Law
were
and
the
Order.
first 2 minutes, weren't they? They were the opening sort of opening policies were Law and Order.
There was a bit of Brexit stuff first, but pretty much, it was certainly some of the key material. Any opinions on the Queen's speech? What do we think of it? Do we think that it was successful in conveying its message? Do we think there was any real policy there? Or was it just basically a preview of the Conservative manifesto?
Ben, you go first, because
well, just from what I've seen, I think it came across very much as just as you say, preview of the manifesto. Simply because they have a minority at the minute, they can't get anything through as it is. They've got minus 43 or something majority, minority. So all these policies are all well and good, but they can't do that until they get more MPs, and the only way they're going to do that is in an election. So. I think some of the policies, they sound new and they sound exciting, and it does sound like some new Conservative policies, but the policies aren't for this government currently. I don't think it'll be for the one that's formed following an election. So that's my view on things.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I think it's obviously clear that they are going to take a hard line on the whole Law and Order stuff. I think they're aware that that hasn't been one of the focus of Conservative policy for a while, and it always pretty invariable. I mean, Ben, you probably know more about the historical polling than I do, but it does poll pretty well. Like, people just do like a good, strong Law and Order party.
Yes, yeah.
And so I think that we're seeing that as
a
new theme.
Yeah.
A nice, happy, nice Conservative party.
Yeah, it's like the when New Labour, so when Labour tried to modernise and they were like tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime, I think was the mantra
classic.
they used.
Oh, that was so classic.
The good old days.
Yeah.
You can have it all.
The classics.
Yes.
Now that's what I call
Where have you
politics.
got
That is
it?
my
Yeah,
favourite stuff.
That's hit number one, and that's what I call
It really is.
classic
That was
Labour.
number one for weeks.
Yeah.
What
the
absolute classic Labour. I bet they still play it at a party conference. Like, that is such a classic Labour
Yeah,
moment.
it's the first one on at the disco afterwards. So yeah, no, it's
That's
so no, they do.
I want to see.
People. Yeah, you're right. I think that will go down well, but it'll go down well in the next election, is what I think. So because they can't do much now, and also curiously, there's been so much I've seen on BBC News and things like that about why the Queen didn't wear a different crown, which I still find so funny that. It's like a discussion point, like why she wore...
I didn't even see this. What's the controversy regarding the crown?
There's the imperial crown, which she's meant to wear at the opening of Parliament, and she did an interview with someone a while ago and she said it's just really heavy. Like it's got 2,000 diamonds on or something. It just weighs a ton.
That sounds really uncomfortable.
And she said it's just really uncomfortable. So obviously she's getting on a bit, and it makes sense. So
she doesn't be wearing 2,000 diamonds on her head.
Yeah, so she wore the state diadem instead, which is only the third time she's not worn the imperial state crown since 1980.
Are you reading this?
Yeah.
No, I am.
Are you reading this
am.
from somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It is
You're
true.
not a secret royalist.
No, I do. Yeah, so she wasn't wearing that. So this is, as I say, it's only the third time she's done it in a reign that she's not worn the imperial crown. But I never even knew before reading this that there were different crowns she's meant to wear at different times. But there are.
No, I have no idea. You learn something new every day.
So apparently it just weighs an absolute ton, which makes sense. Oh, I've got it up here actually. It's got 3,000 diamonds, 17 sapphires, 11 emeralds, and 270 pearls. In addition to
you thought
a
that
large
olive
diamond.
bread was fancy.
Yeah.
That's a reference that no one's going to get.
Yeah, because that bit's going to be cut out. But
basically, they were all mocking me for olive bread. I ate olive bread. That's about it. That's the end of the anecdote.
I feel like I wasn't jumping on you as hard as I could.
Oh no, I was.
Really going for
yeah,
it.
I was going for it. Sorry.
Burnishing his Yorkshire credentials.
I'm not sorry. It was justified. So no,
I'll come with something posher next week.
When you come to visit the office, we're going to have so much olive bread. It's going to be unbelievable. You're not going to be able to come in the door.
A posher snack next time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, escalate it every week.
Single time.
Oh, and
you'll be wearing.
Yeah,
sorry.
Just for the listeners, also Zach's retort to that, or his sort of thing that he was mocking me for, was my pronunciation of Burkow. So apparently I've been saying
Burkow.
So I'd like to make an official apology.
I thought you were going to pick something worse than that.
Yeah,
you were like, Zach's attacking me for something I'm clearly wrong on. You're not really doing yourself many favors.
No.
I thought you were going to say I was some sort of classist mocking you for being from Yorkshire. No.
Oh, he's not happy with that. That's disconnected.
That was perfect timing.
We didn't even hear about Will of Crowns.
11:30. He's probably got an alarm.
I think we're done, aren't we?
Yeah,
pretty much.
It was a meandering podcast, but we're done.
Well, that was a mess.
Yeah, a complete mess.
If you listen this far, congratulations. You learned
and
some facts about crowns.
We're really sorry for how poor this was.
And we took so many left turns, though. I feel like we weren't particularly ready to do this, and we
It was also
flowed.
because we did say, like, we're just going to rely on Ben's jumping around topics.
Yeah, and it absolutely worked.
And he did jump around
We
topics.
went from Brexit to...
what was the left turn? The first big left turn.
the Johnson script.
Johnson
that then
script.
somehow led us to...
That was super left turn.
Yeah, that was really good.
Was really
and then we got to
funny.
Extinction Rebellion via his floral language and Stanley
I was trying
Johnson.
to steer us back on that.
Then from there we went to Queen's Speech, and then we learned some crazy things about crowns. So don't say you don't learn stuff on this podcast.
Yeah, guys.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back sometime soon. Hopefully not 2 weeks' time. Hopefully a bit sooner than that.
Yeah.
And we'll speak to you again then.
Probably sometime this week.
Maybe. We'll see what happens.
Who knows?
Maybe we'll have a Saturday session.
Oh yeah, we probably will have to. A Sunday.
Yeah,
That would
Sunday
be,
session.
Oh god.
What a nightmare. You done with your bread? Finish the bread slightly further away.
Wait, is Zach eating?
Yeah.
Well, you're shaming me there.
I am.
Very
I am.
aggressive.
He's done eating now, though. He's not going to continue eating throughout the podcast. I hope not, at least.
Well, to be fair, I've got a banana that I'm going to make my way through. So.
Oh, wow.
Wow, this is
I feel like it's a
I
real
know.
challenge. Who can eat the most without being sussed out in the
Some
comments?
do.
Well, I've got a banana, a tea, and a lemsip, so I'm going to try and sneakily get through
You are
those through this.
pure health
You are
today.
going to be slurping around.
I
Some
am.
dude in like the first podcast we recorded told, I think it's directed at me, it was at one of us, saying, I don't want to fucking hear you swallowing
Oh.
on the podcast. And I was like,
I know who it
this
was.
is so aggressive. Like,
Where are we meant to swallow?
Yeah, I
I'm
know,
meant to
this
like
is-
properly step away to breathe.